Welcome back to MVM. I'm Jeremy. We're here to talk about Azul, which is a brand new game from Plan B Games. This is coming hot off the heels of Century Spice Road.
It is, and it's going to be another one of those games that takes a lot of people's tables by storm in the next few months.
So it's coming out of Essen. October 26th is the target date. We're going to say right at the start of this is a MVM approved title.
Yeah, right off the bat. Like, we played this, I don't know how many times already, just in the last couple days.
Yeah.
And it, like I said, this is that next game, like a Splendor. Like, everyone's going to be talking about this thing. We don't want to overhype it, but we probably will.
Yeah, so it is a 2 to 4 player pool drafting game. I'll get into what pool drafting is in just a moment, but there's very minimal components in the game. It's one of the great things about it. There's a lot of gameplay with very minimal pieces. So in the game, you have a player board, and each player board is double-sided, but you can play a different variant on the backside. We'll get into that in a moment. Across the top of the player board, you have your score track. This score track will go up and down through the course of the game, so be ready for that. On the left-hand side, you have a place where you'll place all your tiles. We'll explain how those get placed in here, and then your tiles will find a home eventually in these areas to the right. Across the bottom is your discard pile. At the end of every round, there's tiles you may not be able to use, which will give you negative points. And on the bottom right, you have your in-game scoring. So there's a lot of ways to score points through the course of the game, but also at the end of the game itself.
And then out on the board, you have these factories, right, that they call them. Basically these little sort of coaster-like tiles that have these incredible, chunky little tiles, like these mosaic tiles that you're going to be basically drafting as you play the game. But it's yet another one of the aspects of this game that's just fantastic. It is a gorgeous game to look at and to touch.
There is a mathematical component to the game, and if you want to get really good at the game, you need to know that there's 5 different types of tiles in the game, and there's 20 of each of them. There's 100 of these little pieces within the game. These will get recycled through the course of the game, so you can start counting things up and trying to figure out what will be available for the next round, possibly be available for the next round. You also have a first player marker, which always starts the new round in the center of the table. This will be able to be drafted through the course of the game, which will go into your bottom area and give you first player abilities on the next round. So how the game works, there is a number of these factories that will start depending upon the number of players. If you're playing with a 2-player game, you'll have 5 of them. If you're playing with a 4-player game that we have here, you have 9 of them. And on each of these tiles, you'll randomly pull from the bag 4 tiles and place them on each.
Right.
And the distribution, as we just said, it's completely random.
Yeah, it's completely random. So as soon as those come out, what you're looking for, and we'll explain this in a second, are the tiles you're trying to get in your mosaic here.
Yeah.
And when you first play, the first obvious thing is to look for ones that have a lot of the same tile on one, because when it's your turn and you take tiles, you're going to take all of one type of tile from any factory location.
Yeah, so let's explain how a turn works. You have 1 of 2 options on your turn. Starting with the first player, they really only have 1 option, and that's pulling tiles from a particular factory. Anytime you pull tiles from the player area, you have to pull all of the same type and all the ones that are available there of that type. So on my turn, for instance, I could pull the 2 yellow tiles. Everything that's left in that factory gets pushed to the center of the table. And then I have to place these 2 tiles within my player board. Now, I can place them anywhere that I so wish. Now, there are sections that only hold 1 tile. There's sections that hold 5 tiles. If I place them in the 1 tile, this other one gets discarded. However, I could place it in the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5 area. And I simply leave them there until the end of the round. The end of the round is denoted when all of the tiles have been drafted.
Yeah, all the tiles from all 9 factories and everything that's been sort of discarded temporarily into the center of the table, which is the other thing you can do after the first player. You not only choose from any of the 9 factories, but you can also choose from the center. The first person who does this is going to take tiles just like they did from any of the factories. They all of 1 color, but the first person also takes the first player marker for the next round. Unfortunately, you're going to put this down here into your discard row, and it's going to be your first negative point for that round of scoring.
Right. So each player is going to go around the table. They're drafting one at a time. They're taking tiles. They're placing them on their board. They're putting things to the center. And you keep doing that, again, until all of these tiles are gone. Now, there are points in the game when you won't be able to take them because you're filled up in your areas. Now, there's some rules in when you place your tiles. When you place tiles in an area and you draft more tiles, they cannot go behind a different colored tile.
Right. Basically, when you start one type of tile in one of the rows, that's what you have to stick with until you filled that row with that color.
And again, just to make it very apparent, if this is what's available in the center and I were to take these 3 yellows and I wish to place them here, if I can't hold a tile, you can't split these 3 that I drafted. They have to go in one particular location. So I could put 2 here, but the bottom one would have to be discarded.
Right.
And again, you're going to do that until all of the tiles have been placed. Now, there's a scoring round at the end of every single round. The scoring rounds work like this. Every single location that you filled, and when I say by filled, I mean that the entire location has all the tiles possible in it. So the 1 has 1, the 2 has 2, the 3 has 3. Scoring works like this. I simply take the tile, I push it to the color that it matches, and I score points for it. If it's a single tile and it has no adjacency to it, it just scores you 1 point. If you had placed something, let's make an example here for you guys so you understand. If I score my blacks here, 1 gets removed, and I slide this over. That's going to score me 2 points because there's adjacency to another tile.
Exactly. The scoring is a little interesting. If it's just one tile, like Jeremy said, you're just going to get the 1 point. If it's not, and if it's adjacent, you throw that 1 point out the window, and then you're basically just adding up all of the adjacent points, continuously adjacent points, both vertically with that tile and horizontally with that tile. Yeah, so the maximum number of points, I believe, that you can get, since it's a 5x5 grid, would be 10 points with any given placement. But that's going to be
a huge amount of
excellent placement.
So the game is played until one player fills up a complete horizontal row, or if you go through the entire bag twice. Now, once the bag is empty, you take all the discarded tiles, place them back into the bag, and then you redo that one more time. At the end of the game, you're going to score points depending upon a couple different things. Number 1, whatever points you've acquired through the course of the game. You're also going to score an extra 2 points for every horizontal row that you finish. And it is possible to finish 2 of those at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Because that does trigger the end of the game. You score 7 points for every vertical row that you scored, and then you score an extra 10 points for every single type of tile that you have 5 of. So for instance, when you're looking at this board, this can hold 5 blacks, 5 reds, and so forth. So trying to complete those is a huge amount of points.
That is a tricky bonus to get for sure. And if it wasn't clear already, what Jeremy said earlier about when you're staging your tiles over on the left, those have to be completely filled for you to move any over.
Yes.
One thing we didn't mention is if you've partially filled one of those rows, they just stay there.
Yeah.
They stay there for the next round. So it's interesting because when you place those things there, the next round comes out, and you may or may not be able to finish that row.
Yeah.
You get yourself into some situations where you're going to take colors, and we didn't really talk about this, but this penalty row, the discard row, can really come back to haunt you, because if you let the round come all the way around, and you're taking 4 of one color from the center of the board, and you don't have a really good place to put those, they're all going to go down here and give you -1, -1, -2, -2 points.
And you need to be very careful as well. If I've placed this yellow piece in there, that means for the rest of the game, I can't build yellow anymore into that location. That yellow is filled. So again, you're trying to compete with what you've already done and make sure you don't take tiles that are going to give you negative penalties. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, this is a pool drafting game. A pool drafting game is when you have complete knowledge, basically. It's perfect information in the game. You're drafting from the same thing that everyone else has from. It's not like I have these cards, I pass them. You have a pool, and everyone knows that perfect information, which is one of the great things I love about this game, is that it is perfect information. I'm a very math-orientated gamer. Like, I like knowing if I take this, this is going to go to the center. We have 3 more turns left in the round. You're going to be stuck with this no matter what. I like knowing that kind of information.
And that can actually have a significant play in this game, because I wouldn't say hate drafting, but you can definitely take into consideration what other players are doing here. And you might be saying, oh, I could take this for 1 or 2 points, but if I take this, it's going to stick him with -5 points.
Yeah.
You know, that's just a net 3 points that you'd want to make that decision based on. But again, you're also weighing that with all the longer term decisions that you're trying to use to build out your whole mosaic.
And we've played this with all player counts, and I have to say that that type of hate drafting, and we'll use that term, is more apparent in the 2-player game than it is in the 4-player game, which is what I tend to like more. I like having that competitive knowledge of knowing that it's you against I. If I'm not gaining 20 points this round or 10 points this round, that you're going to be losing 7 points and I'm going to be gaining 7 points. So I can start to min-max my score
exactly.
at that point.
In any two-player game, but this one in particular, any points you don't get are effectively points I'm getting at the end of the day. It also should be said, the big difference between a 4-player and a 2-player game, in a 2-player game, it's very unlikely that you're going to go through the bag twice. You're actually going to probably finish out one of the rows, and that's going to trigger the end of the game. Whereas in a 4-player game, it's entirely likely that you'll end up going through the bag twice. I mean, someone might be able to finish a row, but that's like the shortest game is 5 rounds, right? Because you'd have to finish.
It'd be almost impossible, but
it would be very difficult to do that for sure. But the game can be very different, and that's cool. Like I really like the fact that the game feels different between 2 and 4 players.
Now I know a lot of people get on us for not having a lot of cons about games, but I have to be honest. There's not a lot of cons for me in this game. It has a double-sided board to it as well. So if you get tired of the basic strategy, you can go over to the backside and place tiles wherever you so wish.
Yeah, this is really cool because you still have to follow most of all the rules that we just talked about. But when you slide those tiles over to the mosaic, there's no guidance there, so you can place it anywhere you want. Now, with that said, once you've placed the yellow tile, for example, in that row, you can still no longer build another yellow tile in that row. But you have the decision making going on there. So what it's going to do is that mode's going to allow you to build up more of those end of game bonus scenarios where I'm going to build some columns because I just get to pick where I put these tiles. But like any good puzzle game, all your decisions have a pro and a con because you might do that, but it's going to really affect your abilities to expand later.
And it's one of those games too that you play it the first time and you're trying to wrap your brain around how to score and how to draft properly. But the more you play it, the better you get at the game too.
Absolutely.
It's not one of those games where it's luck dependent. This is purely a strategy game. If you go in it and you know how to play this game well, you're going to do well.
On that note, I would say if you're playing this for the first time and you're playing with someone who has a lot of experience, be prepared
to lose,
to not score as well as they do. But at the same time, the game is so much fun and so satisfying. I mean, every turn in this is satisfying, and there's a lot of that like, oh, I hope those 2 red last until the next time around. And then they don't, but guess what? Everyone's taking tiles, so now there's 3 red in the middle potentially. And then you're making these tough decisions like, well, I guess I'll just take the 3 red. Oh, but I have to take that negative point. Oh, but it'll mean I'm first player. There's a lot of really cool things going on in this game from turn to turn.
And that's just the gameplay. The gameplay is amazing. We didn't really talk about the beauty of these components. This board is amazing. These factory tiles. These tiles are so cool to hold
super
and
chunky.
Draft and to move around. The bag that they're in, I mean, it's just a beautiful production. And as we said at the very beginning, there's something to be said about games that have a lot of gameplay in them, but very minimal components. Like, it's so easy to set up. Like, it's literally takes 2 minutes to set up the game, even that. To start playing, and you're in, you play for 20 minutes, and you're out.
Yeah, this is a bold proclamation, but I would say this is one of those games where I really just can't imagine anyone playing it and going, ugh, didn't like this one. It's just a fun game. I mean, it's not the heaviest.
No.
It's very simple. There's not a lot of like meaty game. It's not like a heavy Euro for sure.
No.
But it is a beautiful, it's an elegant, beautiful game with some really interesting puzzle and decision making.
And can be played by absolutely everybody. It can be played by a beginner, and it can be played very competitively as well. So
I'll be a little shocked if this doesn't get nominated next year.
For the Spiel?
Yeah.
I would agree.
This
is
reeks
the type of game
that type of nomination for sure.
Excellent game. Azul from Michael Kiesling. It is a 2 to 4 player game, 20 to 30 minutes in and out. Should be coming out at Essen. If you guys have questions about the game, make them in the comments. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, everything else that we do. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 2 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored in part by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.